Hi everybody, I am going to talk about understanding methods of recording in social case work. Throughout the entire process, the case worker has the obligation to record the interview. The language of interview now has to be translated into the language of the record. According to Kaulushin, recording can be seen as a part of the interview process through the act of recording the interview continues in the mind of the interviewer after it is terminated. It is a retrospective living of the encounter between the client and the case worker. As a consequence, the interviewer of necessity has to selectively decide which aspects of the interview were more significant. He or she has to systematically organize a somewhat chaotic experience. At the end of this talk, you will understand the purpose of recording, know the structure of recording, learn the types of recording, grasp the principles of recording, and become familiar with the methods of collecting information. Let me briefly explain the purpose and advantages of recording. Recording in social casework serves as an aid to practice, administration, teaching and supervision, research, and so on. The fact that recording has improved the practice of social casework is now well accepted and is considered as the most important device to develop one's skills in this area. Records help in assessment and intervention. It enables the case worker to analytically reflect upon and improve his or her practice, thus enabling efficient interviewing and intervention. As the case worker gives the information collected in an organized and structured form, analysis and critical thinking becomes easier. Case records are essential for refreshing the memory, especially when cases stretch for too long and there is chance for the worker to lose the details. They help in preparing well for the next interview and provide the opportunity to rectify previous mistakes. This knowledge, when passed on to a new worker, ensures that the same mistakes are not repeated. Records also serve as important tools of administration. They serve as an index for the correction of policies and practices. Further, they also give an insight into the caseworker's ability and ensure continuity if the caseworker is transferred or resigns. They help the agency in not only evaluating the caseworker but also in the evaluation and appraisal of the existing and as well as future services. Records are also of great importance when the client is referred from one agency to another for specialized services, as they ensure continuity. Further, they allow sharing of information between agencies. Recording as a teaching and supervision device is unavoidable. Records, teaching and supervision are very vital in that they add to the body of knowledge of social work and make this knowledge communicable. They provide an opportunity to the students to organize and present information and observations, reflection and action in a systematic manner. It is useful for reflecting on one's role and reactions in an interaction. Recording serves as a tool for supervision and evaluation, whereby a teacher can encourage students to analyze and interpret data expressing their individuality through it. Supervision encourages the cultivation of better recording skills and better casework as a result. It can be used in systematically training the students and is an important device to introduce students to practice. Records can be used for social research and planning. They serve as a valuable sources of material for research on such important subjects as the effectiveness of casework as a social work method. Records contain accumulated experiences of social caseworkers which can be translated into statistical form and thereby help in finding solution to social problems. Let me now outline the advantages of recording. In short, a recording of the process of casework helps in assessment and intervention. It enables more effective interviewing and intervention in problem solving. It contributes to analytical reflection and improvement in casework practice. It is useful for organizing and structuring of information into orderly thinking, which refreshes the memory of the caseworker and increases retrospective understanding. It enables better planning for subsequent interviews. It is useful as a guide to new caseworkers. It serves as an index for correction of policies. It ensures continuity if any caseworker discontinues the process with a client. It helps to assess the ability of caseworker and to evaluate the agency. It is useful for future reference. Recording can provide statistical data on social problems and help in social research and planning. Let me now tell you about a proposed structure for recording. First, a statement of the purpose of the session is necessary, and this statement should be concise, clear, and specific in relation to the actual session. It should be related to the previous session if there was one, and the purpose of the session should align with the function of the agency, and the client's capacity and motivation should be related to the purpose. The caseworker should record one significant exchange in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the interview using the process recording outline form. Next, the caseworker should make a narration of his or her impressions or assessment. This narrative report should start with facts from the caseworker's observation throughout the session with reference to the client's behavior and affect. It should reveal whether the behavior of the client was appropriate and whether it added any new knowledge about the client's past. The caseworker should mention in this report the major themes or issues identified. Next, the caseworker should write down the patterns observed out of the identified major themes or issues that emerged, besides the defensive mechanisms used by the client. Next, the social caseworker should include the interventions in the record. He or she may choose two significant interventions and mention about the effectiveness of his or her interventions. The caseworker needs to describe any area of concern or discomfort raised for him or her during that intervention. Next, the social caseworker should describe his or her role in the session with particular reference to the professional use of self. This description should include the caseworker's body language, feelings or values that might have helped or hindered the process and how he or she handled the feelings. Next, the caseworker needs to make a brief statement of his or her plans for the next session. The statement should mention the long-range goals that the caseworker has perceived as relevant for the client. Lastly, the caseworker should indicate the areas he or she would like to discuss or explore in supervision. He or she could include in the statement the value dilemmas, counter-transference issues, and diversity issues, if any. From the literature available on casework recording, no clear-cut classification of records on the basis of their types is available. However, we can make some kind of classification of recording as process recording, summary recording, verbatim recording, and non-verbatim recording. Let me explain each of these methods of recording. Process recording is a form of recording used frequently by the caseworkers. It is one method by which the caseworker can record the content of an interview. It involves a written record of all communication, both verbal and non-verbal, based on the worker's best recollections, and a record of the worker's feelings and reflection throughout the interview. In this type, the process of interview is reported and is a rather detailed description of what transpired with considerable paraphrasing. It preserves a sequence in which the various matters were discussed. It includes not only what both the worker and the client said, but also significant reaction of the client and changes in mood and response. In this method, the interview and observation go hand in hand. It may be verbatim or non-verbatim reproduction. Summary recording is a good device for organizing and analyzing facts. It points to the meaning and the relative importance of the materials gathered. A careful summary made at appropriate intervals reduces any bulk writing, clarifies direction, and saves workers' time. Summative recording is a summary of all the formative assessment carried out over a long period and makes statements about the client's progress. It is commonly assumed to be a review or recapitulation of material that has already appeared in the record. It may be either topically arranged or may appear as condensed chronological narratives. Mrs. Sheffield has defined summary in social casework recording as a digest of significant facts in the client's history which has previously been recorded. A summary can be an assessment, a periodic summary, or closing summary. The closing summary is a summary made at the time of process of casework is terminated. To be most effective, it should be written by the worker who was responsible for the intervention at the time of termination. The periodic summary is simply the summary of information previously recorded and is made at more or less regular intervals or at the end of more or less definite episodes in the family history. Verbatim recording is the reproduction of factual data in the individual's own words. It is commonly used in casework because of its accuracy and objectivity. However, it should not become a mechanical reproduction of information because casework as an art requires an intelligent selection and rearrangement of material. As a part of training of the worker, verbatim recording may be of value in developing objectivity. Non-verbatim or narrative recording has been and is still is a predominant style of recording. It is a style found in newspapers and magazines. It is the way we speak of the day's events. It is the way we write letters, and it is the way we maintain diaries. The narrative recording is given priority or reporting acts of practical helpfulness, events, and most collateral visits or conferences. It may be used for the contents of the interview in all instances except when the process itself and use of relationship have special significance. Problem-oriented recording is a method that focuses on specific problems. The components of this method are database, which contains information required for each client regardless of assessment or presenting problems; problem list, which contains major problems currently needing attention; plan, which specifies what is to be done with regard to each problem; progress notes, which document the observations, assessment, and future plans. Record is a dynamic and flexible instrument, and therefore no hard and fast rules can be prescribed. The casework record should reflect an orderly way of thinking, which can be done through a flexible use of process summarized and condensed recording, so that the record's material becomes a positive aid to the caseworker in his or her practice. Let me now outline the principles and guidelines for casework recording. First, maintain a fieldwork diary. While in the field, the caseworker should carry with him or her a fieldwork diary. This diary is used for writing events and instances as they happen during the day. They may cover such things as names, addresses, dates, and details of interviews with the client and collaterals, observations, inferences, and any other such relevant information. From this jumbled up data, the caseworker is then expected to organize the systematically available information into a formal case record. Second, the caseworker should conduct the interview and write in narrative style the questions asked and the way they were answered. He or she should write about the interview as it took place. He or she should suitably record his or her observation that covers the client's mannerisms, expressions, gestures, hesitation, silence, resistance, discomfort, emotions expressed, refusal to answer certain questions, and so on. The record should also reflect significant reactions of the client, such as changes in the mood and responses, body language, the subjects from which the client tends to shy away or finds difficult to discuss. Third, the caseworker should make home visits to collect extra information on environmental factors, relationships of the client with those around him or her. Letters or any other such documents could be attached. At the end of the report, the caseworker should give his or her inferences and interpretation. The caseworker should conclude by briefly outlining his or her plans for the next meeting or the next steps he or she proposes to take. In other words, the caseworker's future plan with respect to that client should be written. Fourth, accuracy, objectivity, simplicity, clarity, and brevity should be observed in writing records. Fifth, facts and their interpretation should be distinguished as it leads to objectivity. Inferences should be drawn in an impartial manner without attempting to influence the judgment of the reader. Sixth, record must be orderly in its arrangement, and it is not possible unless the caseworker has thought out in advance what should be included and then has set out the material in a logical sequence. Seventh, a long record is not necessarily a good record. Records should neither be too long nor too short. 8. The caseworker records are not meant to be literary masterpieces, therefore, they should be written in simple language and simple style. 9th, a clear verbatim quote can sometimes depict a situation much better than a narrative description, and therefore, wherever possible, reaction of the clients should be recorded in their own words. 10th, there should be certain degree of uniformity and standardization as to the form of observation. 11th, to maintain clarity and accuracy, it is better to avoid using words which are vague, ambiguous, and likely to be misinterpreted by the readers. 12th, it should always be made clear who are involved in the situation, who is addressing whom, and what are the sources of information. The details of every significant subject or situation should be given. The caseworker can make use of the face sheet or intake sheet, echo map, and genogram to collect the necessary information about the client. Let me briefly mention about each of these methods of collecting information about the client. Face sheet or intake sheet, as some prefer to call it, is generally filled in at the initial phase of the casework process. Most of the social work agencies have a more or less standardized pro forma which has blanks for entries to be made by the worker related to the identification data such as name, age, occupation, family profile, and other such information. The purpose of the face sheet is to give in a convenient form the objective social facts or situation of the client of a permanent character to particularize the case. Genogram. A family genogram is a graphic representation of one's family tree. It gives a pictorial representation of the members along with a chronological statement of significant events. It helps in assessing a person's psychosocial characteristics or the interactional patterns of the family. The caseworker organizing the information can make it brief or extensive depending on the purpose it is to serve. Echo map. Though family experiences are significant, people are also greatly affected by the social context in which they live. Our record will not be complete if we do not depict this social context. An echo map is an effective tool for this purpose. It is an extremely useful tool for portraying the social context because it provides a diagrammatic representation of a person and social world and energy depleting relationships between members of a primary social system such as family or household and the outside world. The graphic nature of the echo map highlights social strengths and social deficiencies and helps to identify areas of conflict. It lets us know where the changes are needed. The echo map is a natural adjunct to the genogram. Let me sum up. The fact that recording has improved the practice of social casework is now well accepted and is considered as a most important device to develop social caseworker skills in this area. Recording in social casework serves as an aid to practice, administration, teaching and supervision, research, and so on. A structure of recording could consist of statement of the purpose of the session, narration of his or her impressions or assessment, patterns observed Out of the identified major themes or issues that emerged, significant interventions, professional use of self, plans for the next session, and the areas the caseworker would like to discuss or explore further. Process recording, summary recording, verbatim recording, and non-verbatim or narrative recording, problem-oriented recording, and summative recording are some of the methods of recording. Accuracy, objectivity, simplicity, clarity, and brevity should be observed in writing records. Record must be orderly in its arrangement, and it is not possible unless the caseworker has thought out in advance what should be included and then has set out the material in a logical sequence. The casework records are not meant to be literary masterpieces, therefore, they should be written in simple language and simple style. The caseworker can make use of the face sheet or intake sheet, echo map, and genogram to collect the necessary information about the client. Let me sign off now and hope to see you in another session. Thank you.